This is the recap for Dana White's Contender Series week number 9, where I go through each fight, giving my thoughts on whether a contract was received. Obviously, there's some questionable decisions, so I talk about that, and what their next opponent should be or what the next step should be, whether that's in the UFC or not in the UFC. We're going to get started here with Olivier Murad versus Shibin in the featherweight division. Olivier Murad defeats Shibin via split decision. Gets 29-28 from the nod from two judges. One judge had 29-28 Shibin. And I had 29-28 Shibin winning this fight. Questionable decision. It seems like the judges may have not liked the wrestling approach from Shibin, the top control that he had. I'm not sure. There's different judges, man. Like, each judge has their own way of scoring criteria, although that's not how it should be. There always should be this strict line where they judge these fights, but it seems like they liked the power shots from Olivier Murad when they were on the feet over the grappling approach from Shibin. Now, I had Olivier Murad winning that first round, but I definitely thought Shibin stole that second round for sure. And that third round, I think what the judges might have seen was Olivier Murad landing the big shots at the end of the flurry in the last minute. But I still think Shibin secured it. I thought he had enough control. I thought he was also doing a decent amount of damage from bottom. He wasn't doing the biggest shots, but it seemed like he was still maintaining an active position in offense that, the referee didn't even stand him up. So it's a little bit questionable, right? He had enough action on top to win the decision, but either way, Olivier Murad doesn't win a contract, so it's not like either of these guys are getting, screwed over. I think even if Shibin, if I'm being honest, if he won this fight decision, I don't think Dana was going to sign him regardless. He would have thrown some bullshit like, oh, he's 23 years old, he's got time to grow. So I don't think any of these guys were screwed out of a career opportunity, but definitely robbed of a decision. And, obviously that was bad for Shibin to have that loss on his record, even though I felt like he won the fight. Obviously unfortunate for the people who also bet this, right? It seems like there's always split decision, like BS decisions, in my opinion, like on these lower level cards, right, where not a lot of people have their eyes on it, where not a lot of people can complain about it, but it just seems like there's always something that happens that kind of ruins people's parties. I think a lot of people had Shibin winning, although I had Olivier Murad winning. I don't think he won this fight, so I can't really glorify the pick that I had, but it's unfortunate, for Shibin, of course, because you might have just gotten another chance on Contender Series, and now that's taken away. But I'm sure Dana's going to keep an eye on him. He's a good prospect. Both these guys are. And it's just unfortunate for the decision, but here we are. In terms of what's next for Olivier Murad, I don't think he's ready to come back straight onto Contender Series next season. Maybe if he strings up 2 or 3 wins, but it seems like Olivier Murad has a lot of holes in his wrestling defense. I didn't think it was that bad. Maybe Shibin's just a great grappler, but it seems like sometimes he's kind of a fish out of water when he's on the ground, but he did okay. He has got a Titan FC title. I think he should go back and defend that, maybe 1 or 2 fights, and then we might end up seeing him on next season, depending on how active he is, or he might just get called up. But yeah, 6-0, still a good prospect. I just think he needs a little bit more time, probably when he's 29. He'll come back to the UFC, he'll be a more complete fighter. But yeah. Next up, we have Manuel Torres defeating Kolton Englund via first round KO, TKO. I think it was an eye poke for Manuel Torres, but at the same time, Kolton Englund is a professional fighter. He's been in the back room with referees telling him, don't stop fighting until I pull you off, until the fight's over, until I step in. So Kolton Englund knew that. I'm not sure if he looked at Herb Dean and maybe Herb Dean said something or looked at him a certain way where he might have thought that the eye poke, and then just finished it off with ground and pound elbows. A very impressive performance, I gotta say. I had Kolton Englund winning this fight because I thought the pressure was gonna be too much for his style, but Manuel Torres came in polished as fuck. He looked clean, he looked fast, that front kick was on point. I think Manuel Torres is a very good fit for the lightweight division. I think he's a very fun fighter, and he's got a lot of finishes in the first round, so I'm excited to see where he goes. Obviously, I think he recently, not very recent, like in the past years, he came to Entrim Gym, maybe 2 or 3 years. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like that he has other gyms listed on his online profile, so he might have made a new move to Entrim Gym, which is why we might be seeing these new levels from Manuel Torres. He looked really sharp, man. I don't think the eye poke was going to affect anything. Even if Herb Dean had stepped in, I still think Manuel Torres was going to get him out of there. Kolton Englund wasn't throwing enough volume, but it seemed like even when he threw, he just couldn't find his range at all. Manuel Torres was just on it. That was a very impressive performance. He wins the contract. He moves to 12-2. In terms of his next step in the UFC, give him Aaron Gonzalez. Aaron Gonzalez just recently got knocked out by Jim Miller. Obviously, Manuel Torres is not going to immediately jump in there. I think he'll maybe in 2 months, probably the beginning of the next year. So why not give him Eric Gonzalez, right? Eric Gonzalez will entertain that sporadic style. And I don't know if Manuel Torres will try to take this to the ground. I think he'd keep this on the feet. Obviously, he's going to be a banger, probably be on the undercard. That'll be a good introduction to the UFC. 12-2, still young. Finally, we have a contender series where some of the contract winners, most of the contract winners, are young, so we can get to see them grow, obviously, in the UFC, as opposed to, like, trying to rush them up the rankings. But, yeah, we have Euros Medic, which is, like, a fantasy matchup of mine. I don't think they'll give him Euros Medic, but that's just something that I'd love to see. I think that on the field would be absolutely crazy. I think Manuel Torres beats Euros Medic. Like, Manuel Torres is no joke as a grappler, so the fact that he KO'd Kolton Englund, although Kolton Englund has been KO'd, it's impressive to me. Like, he definitely impressed me. Probably not as much as Javid Basharat, but Manuel Torres definitely impressed me. I did not think he was going to do that to Kolton Englund. So, yeah, I think Euros Medic would be a fun fight, but I don't know about Euros Medic, man. It seems like he got destroyed by Jalen Turner. I don't know where he's at in the UFC as a win over Elan Cruz, but, like, 5-1 and then got submitted that fast. I don't know about Euros Medic, but, yeah, Manuel Torres definitely impressive. Next up, we got Karine Silva defeating Qihui via second-round guillotine. Kind of a Hail Mary, right? Maybe not Hail Mary because it was attempts. She was elbowing from the bottom. It seemed like Jan was too much on the feet, and Karine Silva was feeling it, right? Like, Jan was landing body kicks, overhands, and Karine Silva, like, couldn't really reset on the feet and didn't really have anything to offer. Like, Jan would just bulldoze through. And one thing about Jan, like, if you look at her typology now, her record is now 20-3, so it seems like her opponents weren't updated until now. But yeah, that's a very good win for Karine Silva to come back from that. Obviously, Jan, very bad mistake from obviously trying to take her down straight into a guillotine. Like, it was just unfortunate for her. She was doing okay, although I think Karine eventually would have gotten submission because she was peppering shots from the bottom. And obviously, if Jan just continued to stay on top, I think eventually she'd catch her in a submission. I just think Karine Silva was too much on the ground, right? Like, Jan was able to keep the good pressure on top, but I feel like she was getting peppered more from being on top than from Karine Silva being on bottom. So I think eventually Karine Silva would eventually got her out of there. But yeah, we don't know until we know. I might just be a little bit biased because Karine Silva was my pick. But yeah, Jan did well. Unfortunate for her. But as for Karine Silva getting her contract, improving to 14-4. She's in the flyweight division. Not the most exciting division in my opinion, but Hannah Goldie recently coming off a win. I believe she's 1-2 in the UFC, right? Like, Hannah Goldie's getting a little bit older. I don't know where you would benefit from Hannah Goldie, like trying to push Hannah Goldie up the rankings. So why not give her Hannah Goldie? She's coming off a win. Give her a little bit of momentum. Karine Silva, obviously, I think is 27, so she's still kind of young. At least for a woman fight, she's still very young as well. So, yeah, why not give her someone coming off a win, Hannah Goldie? I think she probably submits Hannah Goldie, although Hannah Goldie is pretty decent off her back. But we'll see. We'll see. And in terms of another opponent, you can give Victoria Leonardo. You know, the UFC, sometimes when they have fighters coming off 2 losses, they'll give them a matchup that isn't really ideal for them just to have them cut and, cut those funds. So I think Victoria Leonardo is, like, on the end of a leash, so I think they might just end up giving her that. But because there's not that many flyweights. You can't match her up against a lot of flyweights. You know, the women divisions don't have that much depth. There's not a lot of springboards you can use. So, yeah, why not give her Hannah Goldie coming off a win? Next up, we have performance of the night. Javid Basharat defeating Oron Kahlon via third-round guillotine. What a beating Javid put on Oron. He outclassed him everywhere, right? Like, I knew Javid was good, but it seemed like both guys weren't facing the best level of competition, and we were going to see who the real prospect was. And Javid Basharat flourished, man. Like, on the feet, he looked crisp. I think maybe if you were to give him only one critique, and this is, like, very minimal, is maybe his hands, maybe just a little bit, like, improve his hands a little bit. But he was landing his twos, he was landing his leg kicks, right? Like, there was a leg kick that eventually dropped Oron. I think Oron was doing okay in that second round from not receiving damage. I think he was doing a little bit more better defensively, but, like, Javid was just all over him. Like, it was all Javid the entire time. There was not a time in this fight where I thought that Javid was in danger. There was, like, a guillotine attempt, which he handled very well, was calm, composed, and he got on top, has vicious elbows on top, and obviously he has great submissions. Like, I genuinely didn't think that he was going to be able to submit Oron, because I know Oron is really good, and when he missed weight, it's a little bit concerning, right? They might have like a little bit of an edge, but that didn't matter. Like, Javid put on a clinic. I think it's one of the best performances in this Contender series. He's still undefeated, 11-0. Like, I'm kind of lost in words, because like, I just didn't expect this, right? Like, the odds were close as well. It wasn't like, I think this was one of the closer ones besides Manuel Torres. Yeah, like this, it looks like it's a shutout. Like, 16-0 opponent is not easy to beat. Like, I don't care who you're beating, 16-0 is not a joke. Yeah, like, Javid just performed. What a performance. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't. He wins the contract. He wins over a lot of fans, right? Like, of all the stuff that was coming into this fight. Like, he won a lot of fans, I'm sure. In terms of his next opponent, he's young, man. He's 26. Like, let's build him up. Like, let's not push him. Let's give him Kevin Natividad. Like, he's coming off 2 losses. I believe a knockout loss as well. Like, why not? Right? UFC likes to cut these fighters when they have 3 losses. I'm sure the UFC wouldn't mind. Right? Give him something. Like, build him up, right? Like, dude, we don't need to give him a name straight off the bat. We really don't. Khalid Taha's coming off 2 losses. He's coming off some good losses. He actually has wins in the UFC. So if you want to give him someone people respect, Khalid Taha, because even in those decision losses to like Qihui Barcelos, he had a good showing. I'm sure, like, if you want to give him someone like Khalid Taha, they'll give him Javid a little bit more credit. But like, everybody knows Javid's good. He's got a future in this division. It's gonna take a while though, because the bantamweight division is like very steep. He's gonna take a little bit longer to get to the rankings, but he definitely has the potential to get there. Great performance by Javid Basharat. You could say he terrorized him, right? He really did. He terrorized him. Next up in the co-main event, we had Quinonez defeating Xiao via unanimous decision 30-27 across the board. A clean performance by Quinonez, right? He definitely utilized his range well, his footwork. He was light on his feet all those 3 rounds, man. I thought he was going to gas, man, but he kept that range very well, very light on his feet, in and out. I wouldn't say in and out, but he was definitely using his range with his jab, his 1-2s. Very good uppercut. His Muay Thai clinch is pretty nasty. I don't know why he didn't go to it. He definitely had a little bit of a height advantage, so those clinches were brutal when he would get those knees up. He had some knees to the bodies as well. I think Xiao was doing well, right? He was finding Quinonez off the counters and off the corners when Quinonez would circle, but it just wasn't enough volume landing to steal a round, really. He was coming up in that second round. Quinonez was getting tagged. He got rocked at some point, but Quinonez just kept it on him, kept throwing more, and was just off the edge of those punches, right? You look at Quinonez, he practically took no damage, right? Maybe he'll have a couple bruises, but Quinonez was doing well. Xiao, I think, invested way too much on that leg kick. I think what he thought, he was trying to slow down that movement from Quinonez, and that's another thing that's impressive, right? That Quinonez was able to eat so many, I don't even know how many he threw, probably like 20 calf kicks, and Quinonez just kept on walking, kept circling around like nothing happened. Quinonez is a dog, man. He's got a good record, 16-3, fought some good promotions, got KO'd in Brave though, but he was winning that fight. Like, if you look at that Brave fight, he got KO'd and he was winning that first round, so Quinonez is definitely good. I didn't believe that he was Quinonez's brother. I didn't know. I saw it online, but I thought that was like somebody else, but it was his brother Quinonez, so moves to 16-3. The second fighter in Antrim Gym to win a contract. Very well done. For his next opponent, give him another Chinese fighter. Let him be the Chinese murderer instead of being the Mongolian murderer from Danet Bagarel. Give him the problem for the Chinese. No, I'm just kidding. Give him Eliana Tang, coming off a draw and a loss. I believe he's like some random record. He's like 1-1-1 in the UFC. Give him that, right? Give him something to build off. 16-3 record. Like, I don't know where Quinonez fits in this bantamweight division, right? He's sneakily a good grappler, which I don't know. How is this? We didn't really get to see his grappling, so I don't know how his grappling is going to be at the UFC level. He is very good grappler. He likes to take the back. So I think Quinonez is well-rounded. I think he could make it decently far and hover in that 20 and the 25 range in the bantamweight division. But yeah, like, we haven't seen his full skill set at this level, so I'm excited to see him. Give him Guido Quinetti. Quinetti's going to want to be on the feet as well. Doesn't like being on his back. I'm sure Quinonez won't take it to the ground unless being provoked. So I think that would be a fun scrap. That would be a decision fight for sure. Haley Alatang as well, also a durable guy. I think Haile Latang got KO'd by Martinez if that was someone else. But Quinonez, that'll be a good fight with Haile Latang. Another stocky guy. It'll be up in Quinonez's face. Test Quinonez's range at like a little bit of a higher level as well. Yeah, good performance by Quinonez. I was impressed for sure. And last but not least, the main event, Gadzhi Omargahdziev defeating Jansey Silva via first round knee bar. Holy shit. Okay, right before the finish, Jansey was landing some heavy ground and pound, man. I was worried that Gadzhi was going to get KO'd because I had a parlay of Gadzhi getting the win by finish, over 1.5 on Quinonez, and Manuel Torres to get a finish. I did a Hail Mary parlay. I hit that. That was like plus 700 odds. But vicious knee bar. There was like a clip at the end where Gadzhi fucking like shoves Jansey's other leg. I don't know if like maybe you're intense, but the man just got knee barred, bro. Like just leave him there. Like just win the fight and just let it go, right? It seems. But you know, it's the fight business. Who gives a fuck, right? It's vicious as it can get. But yeah, impressive performance. Got the submission immediately. Took the fight to the ground a lot faster than I thought. I had another bet of this over 1.5 that broke earlier on, so that wouldn't even cashed if it got to the main event. But yeah, Gadzhi impressed me. He's better than I thought, right? Like, there's a reason this guy's undefeated, has a lot of amateur experience. I think Gadzhi can go far in the middleweight division. Middleweight division, I'm going to say it again, is shit. Like, this guy can cause a lot of problems if he could take the UFC level guys down. I think he can. And his striking, right? He landed an overhand right before he took Jansey Silva that landed pretty flush, right? Obviously, Jansey Silva knew those takedowns were coming, so his striking was nullified a little bit, even in the beginning when they were standing. But yeah, impressive performance. He gets a contract. In terms of his next opponent, he's 28 years old. I actually think he's the real deal. I think they could maybe not rush him immediately, but give him someone a little bit higher in the rankings. Don't give him like the lower level middleweights because those guys aren't really that great. Give him Karl Roberson. He's coming off 2 losses. The UFC likes to get rid of these guys. Get rid of him, man. He's coming off 2 subs. I think that's an easy win for Gadzhi. And Karl Roberson, regardless of having these losses, is pretty good. He's pretty good. Like, he's a little bit underrated, but he definitely gets losses on his record. He's a little bit higher in the rankings compared to these other guys. Misha Serkinov coming off that loss to Jocko. He's moving down from light heavyweight. You can give him that. That would be definitely a bigger jump. That would be a good test. But I think Gadzhi has a good chance against Serkinov, right? Like, Gadzhi is pretty crazy on the grappling. Like, I'm very surprised that he was able to get it out of there that quickly. Let's just say that. I think that'll be a good fight. You know, Serkinov moving down to middleweight. Like, give him another test, right? He's moving down to middleweight. Why not give him a game opponent in Gadzhi? But you see all these Contender Series guys getting rebooked immediately. I wouldn't be surprised if we have matchups for these guys in the coming weeks. But yeah, like, I don't know. It's weird with these Contender Series guys what matchups they want to get. So sometimes when I try, like, getting these matchmaking, it's odd because sometimes they'll try to jump them up. Like a Worley Alves matchup, I would have never thought Worley Alves against Jack Maddalena. Like, I really would have never thought that fight was going to get booked. But yeah, that was the full card. Very entertaining card. 6 fights. I think it was the first time that there was 6 fights in Contender Series. We enjoy it while we can. And yeah, I just love fights on a Tuesday, man. I love it.